Hi everyone, welcome to today's creative workshop demonstration with Faith Gruver, a virtual program in this year's M&T Bank Clothesline Online Festival. This festival has been the Memorial Art Gallery's largest fundraiser for more than 60 years, and although we've had to go virtual this year, our goals are still the same. We want to highlight and support the arts and our artists, so thank you all for joining us today. I just want to mention a few brief housekeeping items before we get started. We do have a live captioner with us today, so if you would like to see captions, you can click the closed captioning CC button at the bottom of your screen. Also, after today's presentation, we'll have time to answer questions that you've submitted, so be sure to submit your questions at any time by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And then at the end of today's webinar, your browser should take you to a short survey about your experience, so let us know what you think. So now I'm just going to introduce our guests today. Faith Gruver is one of our creative workshop instructors who earned her BFA in illustration with a minor in museum studies from the Rochester Institute of Technology. Her love of art began at the Memorial Art Gallery as a child and has been sustained by the endless inspiration that resides within the gallery space. Her specialties are in portraiture, and she works in a variety of mediums, including acrylic, gouache, and digital painting. A recurring theme in her work is the celebration of diversity by creating a space for underrepresented individuals. She's expanded her career into teaching because she's passionate about sharing the personal growth that can be found in creating art. We also have Rachael Baldanza with us today. She's been a member of the Creative Workshop administrative team since 2004 and is the curriculum director for the workshop. She works directly with our teachers to ensure that the creative workshop classes are of high quality and in line with what students want to learn. So Faith, I'm going to pass it to you now so that you can tell us about what we will be doing today.
Thank you so much. That was a great intro. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Faith, and you described my background perfectly. And essentially in this video, you'll get a little taste of my teaching style. I like to help my students understand how to use the tools that they have with simple techniques and an intuitive understanding of color to paint anything that they'd like. The theme today is wood and glass. So we're not going to be whittling anything or blowing anything out of glass. Well, that would be very cool. Rachael and I just couldn't figure out the logistics. So what we're going to do is paint a picture of some wood texture, which can be very useful in anything that you want to paint, well, at least as long as it's made out of wood. And we'll be making a nice little glass lantern on top of that. This is just a simple little dipping our toe into the possibilities of acrylic. I definitely love acrylic painting. As we mentioned, there's lots of other mediums as well that we can learn at the gallery. But acrylic is a great thing that we can use because if you mess up, it's very opaque. So we can paint right back on top of it and it's like nothing ever happened. So I think it's probably a good time to jump into the little demonstration here. Let me just share my screen. And alrighty, here we go.
Thanks for sharing that video of you making that piece, Faith. That was awesome. I've got to say, you make it look easy.
Take one of my classes and it will be.
Yeah, so you're teaching a bunch of classes in our creative workshop fall semester, this upcoming fall, starting in October. Will students in your classes be learning how to paint these natural surfaces that you just showed us how to create?
Definitely. So what I love to do is I have a set of lessons that I create for each class, and they're new every time. So if you took beginning acrylic painting with me once, you could take it again, and you're going to get a class that teaches you techniques, and of course me again, but completely different projects. And then after the first day of class, I love to ask people if there's anything in particular that they really want to paint. Once I had a student who just wanted to paint a picture of the beach and the ocean so badly, and so we fit things like that into our classes then. So I love to get feedback from students as well about what they really want to learn and adjust from there. But definitely natural surfaces, landscapes, things like that are great things to start learning how to paint. Organic surfaces and shapes are the most forgiving things. Now, unlike geometric shapes, it can be a little bit trickier, so we stay away from those at first.
That's awesome. I'm surprised to say you hear that those natural surfaces are easy to fix. I was going to ask if you feel like, myself as a student, if I feel like I'm messing up a wood grain that I'm trying to create, like you just did in that tutorial, what would you recommend for fixing an error?
Sure. A lot of times I tell people first we'll try, perfecting the technique and correcting. And after that, I say, you know what, it just doesn't want to be that right now. So I wanted to create, and I did something that was a really warm tone wood grain, and it's just not working out and it's looking kind of gray. There's whitewashed wood as well out there, so we can pivot and create something else. So sometimes our art kind of takes us in a different direction. And from there, we can create something beautiful that kind of surprises us.
Yeah. So if it was whitewashed wood, would you select different colors than the ones that we just saw in that tutorial?
Definitely, it's a lot more neutral tones, obviously a lot of white, but you're gonna get some black, still some umber in there, and even some blues, because a lot of white has some gray in it for the shading, and that gray tone, you don't have to just use white and black, you can use blues and purples and all sorts of cool colors for grayer, darker areas like that. And so in a whitewashed wood or a lighter wood that's seen a lot more sun, you would definitely start to use a lot more blues and purples and even some greens in there.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. So you showed us a tutorial on in painting as a medium, but I know that you're teaching a few different mediums in the creative workshop this fall. And just what's your favorite medium to work with and also to teach? And if they're different, why?
Yeah, well, in my professional work, I definitely work a lot in digital illustration. I work for a publishing company right now as well, and I create book covers and interiors. And for that, digital illustration is definitely the not easiest, but the most effective form to use, because we consult with the author and make sure that they like the thing that I created, and if it needs to be adjusted and tweaked, it's a lot easier with a digital illustration to change something or get rid of one little part or add something in or resize. So for my professional career, digital illustration, just because of the ease of adjusting to the client's needs. But when I teach, I love to teach traditionally as well, because there's something about using paint in your hands that is just, it's really enjoyable. It helps us to learn to love painting and to love getting messy and having fun in that way. And then moving on to digital as well, I teach some of that too. A lot of younger people really like to learn digital because it is so popular, and they can share it on their Instagram and social media and record themselves painting it a little bit easier than rigging up a camera and painting with traditional paints. So it kind of depends on the person and the audience and the application, but definitely teaching. I love acrylic paint, but watercolor is super popular with our students as well, and that has its joys too.
Wow, that's awesome. So in your painting classes, do you focus on one type of paint, or do you explore the different types, watercolor, oil, acrylic? Do you cover all the painting bases in some of your classes at the workshop?
That's a great question. We have a lot of classes that are specifically for a type of paint, and so I'll teach like an acrylic class and a watercolor class separately, but we also have art for absolute beginners or playful painting, and those classes, that's when we jump into just dipping our toe, is a great way that Rachel describes it, into different types of painting. So playful painting is one where you would try watercolor and acrylic, not oil painting, because that's not always so fun when we're learning how to paint, so that's a little bit more advanced, but that's just a great way to kind of learn what type of painting that we like, and then from there you can pick a class that's specifically in that area. So a lot of students come into playful painting and they say, I love watercolor, I want to learn that, and then after trying watercolor they go, oh, that really frustrated me and I liked acrylic better. So it helps you make a more informed decision later on when you're choosing a class that's more specifically towards that type of paint.
Wow, that playful painting sounds pretty fun. I might have to sign up.
Pretty playful.
Another question. So you mentioned that you, in your professional side to your artistic career, work in digital illustration a lot. How do you start your works of art generally, both when you're working with hands-on mediums like oil and acrylic paint, and then the digital illustration world? Is it a different process for each of those for when you're coming up with concepts and the foundation to your works?
It's pretty much the same for me. I was trained at RIT to make sure that my style and technique translated across whatever medium I was working in. So I had a professor who didn't work digitally, but he told us if we ever did, it had better look as good as our traditional work. And I think that's really important because I love when people look at my digital work and they're surprised that it was digital. I don't think that your style needs to change and simplify for that. So with any painting that I do, it all starts with a concept and then I can make it in any medium. So that just kind of depends on what the project is, if it's for an acrylic class or if it's for a digital book illustration. So that usually dictates the medium that we're using. But from there, you start with your base layer and you just get some color down. So you'll see in the beginning of, or as you saw in the beginning of the wood grain painting, we just picked 3 colors and then we just started painting those just to get something on our paper so it's a little bit less intimidating and we don't feel like we're gonna mess it up and it's a little bit less precious feeling. And then from there, you add a little bit more detail with midtones, and then you get into those highlights and really dark shadows that are your specific details at the end. So I like to start my students and my own work as simple and free as possible so we don't feel like we're gonna mess it up a little bit more abstractly. And then from there, we kind of perfect it into that specific thing that we wanted to create.
That's awesome. Another question I have for you, when you're doing work in a series, I know you have a few series of works on your website. How important is the connection between the overall theme amongst the works and each individual work of art?
That's a really good question. The connection and the theme is almost, well, I would say it's as important. It's kind of a 50-50 as to the strength of the individual piece itself. Because as you line them up, if they don't go together and the compositions don't feel unified, then even if it's beautiful individually, it kind of falls apart because it needs to have the strength in the numbers as well. So a great way to have unity among different works of art, or if you're looking at your own work from a class and you're deciding what to hang up next to each other on the wall, you look at things like the weight of the thing in your composition. So if I have something that is a bust portrait, so it's just kind of shoulders up, I'm not going to put it next to a full body portrait because those have different weights. The bust is going to look much more zoomed in, it'll look heavier, and the full body is going to look a little bit lighter because it's zoomed out and farther away. So thinking about things like that. And then with color, you can have a lot of unification between your different images, and that's one way to have them go together. But another is to think about how the colors complement each other. So I have one series where a lot of my figures are depicted in clouds. So they're all full body figures, but the clouds are all different colors in each of them. So I have the same subject, the clouds in my background. I have different people in them, but they're all positioned at the same distance away from the viewer. But then I have different colors in each of them so they don't get too redundant. So there's a lot of different little tricks we can use to make things go together.
Yeah, that's a great point. Also, for your color palette, do you have specific colors that you tend to want to create more with? Do you prefer like pinks and blues and pop colors, or do you prefer natural tones, or do you kind of do it all?
I kind of watched myself, and when I first started creating, a lot of my stuff was very kind of neutral toned and kind of quiet. And then when I would look at other people's art, I loved brighter, bolder colors. And I thought, well, I'm not subconsciously doing that, so I need to make a conscious effort to pick things that are a little bit more saturated. And then I had a little while when I was learning to paint where every time I had someone point out to me, I used a yellow ochre, which is like a warm yellow, a phthalo blue, which is sort of a navy blue, and then I would get some red in there. So everything was kind of primary colors, which is nice and it looked good, but then things start to look redundant. So I kind of like to look at my portfolio or my website and see what I tend to use a lot and then deviate from that so that it can look a little bit more well-rounded and fleshed out.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Is that also something that in your classes at the workshop, do you push your students also to kind of like try to grow a little bit from the colors that they might be leaning towards? Or is that like a technique that you teach in your classes?
Yeah.
Is it the same process, I guess, for getting shadows and highlights with a blue palette versus a, natural tones palette?
Yeah, I try to give them a little bit of a taste of using things that are more neutral and realistic, and then things that are more bold and just kind of for fun and abstracted. So what I tend to do is a project that's a little bit more simple with color, just so we can learn a bit more about shading. Then we'll talk about usually environmental, atmospheric perspective, where things that are farther away are bluer and greener and a little bit blurrier and lighter, and things that are closer a bit darker. We'll do things like that for landscapes, because that's something that's relatively simple once you understand it, and you can apply it to any landscape that you're painting. And then from there, the last project, or after we've done something that's very technical, we'll have a bit more fun with some color, and we'll kind of branch out from that. So once we did an apple, and we really kept it loose, and we didn't blend anything, and we used reds and oranges and yellows and greens instead of just using a couple of simple colors and blending them perfectly. So getting a read on the class, and if we're feeling like we've done a lot of technical, really accurate work and we need a break from that, I'm definitely open to adjusting and tweaking the lesson plan to help people feel like they've had a well-rounded approach to color theory and to different subjects that they got the opportunity to paint.
That's awesome. I am not a big painter, but I find sometimes it's hard to try and use colors that are, not the basic natural tones. So I can imagine how helpful that is for students in the classroom to have some guidance and just going after it and putting paint on paper and experimenting. That's so important.
Definitely. Rachel and I like to say that we're teaching people to be confident, so that when they're at home after the class and after the fact and they see something that they want to paint. Rachel once used a great example. If you're having your coffee in the morning, you're looking at your garden and you think, I want to paint that, you should be able to pull out your watercolors after one of our classes, be it with me or someone else. Like Rachel just got to paint, and you just paint whatever you see, because you know that you've learned how to look at color a little bit differently and how to add extra colors, like you're saying, that you might not have thought of before, and understanding the reason why you're adding those colors to it. A lot of students say there's lots of YouTube videos out there and lots of little, they call them speed paints, like what we just saw, where we watch someone paint really quickly. But it's different when you have someone to explain to you why you're choosing the color that you're choosing and how it can help your painting there, and why you can get away with adding a little bit of an extra fun pop of color over here, over there, that you normally wouldn't have thought goes there, you wouldn't have normally seen there.
Yeah.
Also, there's something to be said for being accountable to the group. So one of the great things about class is Faith's classes this semester are going to be digital. They're going to be via Zoom. But every week at the same time, people are meeting up. There'll be demos. There'll be one-on-one discussions. There'll be opportunities for people to show their own artwork. And, if in that beginning watercolor class over 8 weeks, each student does what they do, what we see them do at the workshop, and that's go through a transformation. You want to make art, and what we do is we enable you to do that. We give you the tools and the techniques and the confidence, and it's kind of fun for me to watch, to hear Faith, because I do remember her as a youth student at the workshop. I do remember her at age 16 winning a congressional competition, and just seeing the drive that she had then, and how she's worked it into her own persona as an artist, as a teaching artist, and as an illustrator, and kind of crossing all those things off her list that she wanted to do when I first met her. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's really cool that you took classes and now you teach the classes, Faith. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
And like Rachel said, I mean, that's got to be exciting for her to have you as a student, and then to see you, continue as a teacher, and stay involved with the workshop.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place to be, and the people there are just so wonderful. So even if, sign up for my classes, but even if you don't, not going to say don't sign up for mine, but even if you don't, I tell students, they ask, what teacher do you recommend? Who else is great in this? And I want another perspective too. There's no one I could not recommend. Everyone is just wonderful there, and everyone's got such a great attitude, and the ability to be helped one-on-one is invaluable. It's so great for your growth as an artist. And every time you leave one of our classes, I know I felt it as a student, your growth by yourself kind of goes up steadily, but then it's this exponential growth after one of our classes where you've got that extra tools and under your belt and you're ready to go for the future.
Yeah. Rachel, I have a question for you. So you mentioned that for the fall, some of the classes, or maybe all of the classes that we're offering, are going to have some virtual aspect to them.
No, actually, the way it works is we will have a good percentage of classes that are brick and mortar, traditional classes happening at the workshop. We have wonderful safety protocols in place. We ran classes this summer. They were wonderful. Smaller class sizes, but the same classes, basically. And that goes for kids, teens, and adults. But we also, in the fall brochure, which I have thousands of by my desk, but I have none to show you. But they are on the website right now, I do believe. But we have a 2-page spread that's all the classes that are held Zoom. So those are traditional classes. Like in Faith's case, her adult offerings are beginning watercolor. There's a beginning drawing, I think, right? Yeah, and beginning acrylic painting. But she'll also offer 2 sections of a teen class that she's had before. We've never had it digitally, even though it's called Drawing into the Digital. It is digital drawing for teenagers, so why haven't we had it online? Sometimes it takes a pandemic to remind you that you can do things like that. But anyway, I think that'll be like a really great space and place, especially for that class, because all those young people are traditionally, we know that they're making art in their basements, but that they're not really sharing it with people that are right down the street. They might be sharing it with, people in Japan and wherever, but they don't have a community that a class helps provide, or an instructor who can really speak to them about what it is to do, digital illustrations for a children's book where the author's on one continent and the publisher's on another and the illustrators here in Rochester.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers your question.
That's a great answer. I think it's nice to hear from you as the person that's been working so hard to be able to continue our classes despite the pandemic, to hear what steps we're taking to still provide those classes. Will they be smaller in size? And do you mind just sharing some of the safety measures we're taking for those classes for people who are interested in signing up for them?
Absolutely. Absolutely happy to do so. And it's also right on the first page of the brochure. And right on the first page of our website. So first and foremost, everyone is masked. And that goes for the whole duration of the class and anytime you're in the workshop space. The class sizes are smaller. In some studios, like our jewelry studio, which is kind of a confined space, we've limited that to 3 students and 1 teacher. So you really get one-on-one feedback. That's also a class where it's really close to our outside door. So the instructor might, class starts at 6:30 and everything's going around 7:15. She might say to everybody, hey, let's go outside. Just, get at a safe distance from everybody, take our masks off, take a deep breath, and then come back inside. What we've found is that our large double room studios work really well for spacing desks. So we do have our drawing and painting classes. All the desks are spaced out appropriately. There's no sharing of materials. In kids classes and teen classes, the students are given a plastic bag with everything they need in it, and they'll keep that there to use it the next time. The wonderful facilities crew we have at the museum cleans every room, every space, cleans the bathrooms regularly. Everything is spritzed and sprayed, and that's all the doorknobs, all the everything. We really, because we're part of a wonderful museum, that's part of a wonderful university that has all these resources to, at the end of the day, the goal is to keep people safe and happy. I think we do a great job of that. We ran a number of programs this summer, including several all-day art camps for kids, where we were concerned about, can these kids keep their masks on all day? Can they, what does it mean to an 8-year-old to be socially distanced? But they understand. They're living in the same world we are. So what we heard from the kids and from the parents was, thank you for retaining something fun in our summer. Everything else was canceled. Yeah, I'm sure there's things I'm forgetting, but those are the big ones that all of the studios are really carefully cleaned on a regular basis. And we'll just keep in close contact with students and teachers as we go forward. But
yeah, I think the summer programs were a huge success, and lucky us to have such a great facilities team that's constantly working to keep everything sanitized and safe.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely encouraging to have had such a great summer going into fall semester.
Yeah.
So I guess I have another question for you, Faith, especially since it could look a little bit different from semesters in the past. What are some of the things that you would recommend for students to have to be prepared for classes this upcoming fall?
Sure. Well, for one, if you're taking a Zoom class, reliable Wi-Fi is going to be very important for that.
Yeah.
I like to tell my students that traditionally when we're taught how to paint, it's very specific tints and shades of blue that people have to get, or certain types of colors and certain size brushes. I really encourage kind of good enough painting and good enough sizing. So when we use our brushes, if you have a larger brush, a medium, and a smaller brush, that's fine. So a large brush could be like a 6 size, it could be a 7. And not to mention too, even when it's not COVID times and we're not really as worried so much about trying to just get the supplies that we need if they're a little bit more readily available. Brush sizes are kind of like jean sizes. They're different in every brand and they never quite seem to be what you think they're going to be. So regardless, it's really not important to me that you have exactly the same type of blue that I have. So there's like phthalo blue and there's ultramarine blue and then there's Naples yellow and yellow ochre. If you don't have the exact type of color that I have, I can teach you how to mix that color out of the colors that you do have and how to make your colors work. So really just a variety of colors in terms of paints, be it watercolor or acrylic. We can mix those into the things that we need. So if you find that your cadmium red is out, but you have primary red, that's going to be okay. And more modern techniques of painting, and those can still look realistic and beautiful and like old traditional paintings. That's what I mean by intuitive color. We really don't need to sit there and worry about the exact type of color that we're mixing. We can use our understanding of color theory and a lot of logic to help choose the colors that we're mixing and using together. And the same with our brushes. You'll see, or as you saw with the painting that I made, I didn't use any super narrow brushes. I was able to use just a couple of flat brushes with different angle techniques to create thinner lines or thicker lines depending on what I was doing. So we can kind of take whatever you have and adjust it to what you need to do. So I would say just don't stress about getting every single thing on the supply list, as long as you can kind of get a variety of sizes for your brushes, a variety of colors, and something to paint on. Even if that thing's a piece of cardboard, we can paint on cardboard, no problem. Unless it's watercolor. Maybe just do that for acrylic. But watercolor, you might need watercolor paper. I'm thinking myself later. But in general, we can kind of just make it work with whatever you have. So don't stress too much about spending hundreds of dollars on supplies.
That's great to hear. I know that it's dangerous to go into an art store because there's so much and it's all so beautiful and you want it all, but it adds up quick when it comes to the dollar amount.
Oh, it gets high.
Would you, the same question, I guess, for your drawing classes, do you have a similar approach? Do you recommend a certain set of tools that students should have to start with if it's their first time, taking a drawing class?
Yeah, with drawing, a sketchbook is always nice to have because then your papers aren't kind of getting lost all over the place. And when you want to find something you made a week ago, it's right there. It's not in a drawer somewhere and you didn't realize you put it in a different pile. So a sketchbook is great to have. And those you can get at basically any craft store, and most craft stores have coupons online, so you can get those pretty affordably. And then for pencils, really a number 2 pencil or mechanical pencil, they work just fine. Nice drawing pencils are fun to have, and you can get a couple different weights. So those numbers and letters on your pencil mean something. H means hard, so it draws lighter. The number just means how hard it is. So a 6H is a lot harder than a 2H because 6 is bigger than 2. And a B is a soft pencil. And then HB is kind of in the middle. So, you know, a variety of those pencils is nice to have. You can get those little pencil kits at the same craft store that you got your sketchbook at. But if that's a little bit out of your price range, Dollar Tree has regular old pencils, mechanical, or just the traditional wooden pencil. And those work just fine for drawing. We really don't need any fancy tools for that.
That's great. That's great. I have a few more questions for you, more about your business side to your artistic career. But Rachel, I just wanted to give you another chance if you wanted to talk about anything related to the workshop. We have about 15 minutes left, so I just have some final questions for Faith to get to know a little bit about her illustration career and how she came to where she is today as an artist before we go.
Sure. I'll just simply state that registration begins this week. Our classes are going to start in October, but if you are a member or know a member or want to become a member, these are all possibilities. Registration will start September 14th in our online system. And then general registration starts September 20th. It's either the 20th or the 21st. But that brochure with an orange cover is right on our website, and you can peruse it. If you have questions about classes, by all means, shoot me an email, give me a call, and we hope to see you in classes in the fall.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Rachel.
No problem.
So Faith, just a couple last questions before I close us up today.
All right.
You mentioned that you're an illustrator for children's books. I was just wondering, are there any projects that you're currently working on that you're excited about or want to tell us about?
Thank you for asking. Well, I work for a publishing company called Dorrance, and that's Dorrance, if you want to look them up. But they are a company that publishes basically kind of any genre, and they like to have a group of illustrators on staff. It's kind of how publishing works. So it used to be called a staff illustrator. Now it's called a freelance illustrator. But essentially, at a publishing company, you have the people who work as creative directors, and then they have authors that approach them, or sometimes illustrators that want to be published by them. And so when they have an author with a book, they reach into their little collection of illustrators that they have kind of on standby, and they match them up with the books that they're publishing. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to talk about the books I have in production right now, but there's, you know, a little bit of children's books, a little bit of young adult fiction, a little bit of adult fantasy and things like that. But yeah, it's all very fun. It's definitely a lot more steady work than people realize. Those jobs are really tricky to get, but once you're in and you have a publishing company that likes to use you and work with you, as long as you hand in nice work on time, you're kind of good to go, and it's really fun. So it's a really great thing that I get to experience, and it's something I get to share with my students as real world experience, because a lot of them are thinking about second careers, or sometimes if I have those teenagers and teen classes, I can talk to them about the portfolio process for a college application, and then about applying to their final job after college, or one of their final jobs, and how that kind of works. And I'm always happy to look at students' portfolios and past work too, if they have any questions about how to present it well, or what they should share, what they might need to add to kind of fully flesh that out and look well-rounded.
That's awesome. And I can't imagine how valuable that is to your students, for you to be there for them as a mentor, somebody who's really working in the field actively. Do you have any tips or tricks to anybody who's aspiring to be an illustrator like you as a professional?
Persistence. I saw a quote, I think it was like yesterday. It's like, you know, the the minute that you give up is like the week before you get your big break. So, and the whole concept of a big break too. It's lots of little projects that kind of build up over time. I'm definitely a big advocate for knocking on doors and talking to people and reaching out yourself. No one's really gonna kind of come to you. It's really good to be able to have people skills, be able to talk to people and present yourself well. So when we talked about sharing our art, I think Rachel was talking about that with other students in a class. That can be one of the most nerve-wracking things to learn. But once you have that skill, if you are looking towards a career in that, being able to speak well about your work and sound confident and to be confident in your work and yourself and your ability to produce beautiful things for your client that they're going to love and that are on brand for what they're looking for, and while keeping your own style intact. That's all skills that you get in class, just practicing talking about what you're making. So definitely being persistent and looking into classes like ours. That's why I took classes and that's why I stayed to teach. They helped me so much to grow. And even still while I'm teaching, I get to meet so many interesting people. And if you're in a class, you get to meet other people. So just being open to new experiences and asking questions and being the one to reach out. You don't have to necessarily be outgoing. You can fake it till you make it and just kind of, I tell people I force myself to be outgoing. Kind of as Rachel mentioned, I'm definitely an introvert by nature, but people, when I meet them, they're always like, oh, I'm so surprised. You seem so outgoing. But you just have to force yourself to talk to people that you don't know, because they might have something to help you. And even if they don't have a project for you at the time, they might be able to refer you to someone else.
You lost your sound for a second, Faith.
Oh,
there you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're good
Even
now.
if someone doesn't have a project for you, they might know someone who can help you. And so it's just all about talking to people.
That's awesome. Well, Faith, Rachel, thank you so much for
Sure.
joining us today. I'm just going to share my screen with some links for people if anybody would like to sign up for classes this fall. Faith is teaching a bunch of classes, including drawing into the digital, beginning drawing, beginning acrylic painting, beginning watercolor painting and sketching. And you can find all of those classes in the brochure, and you can sign up online by visiting the Creative Workshop website on mag.rochester.edu. We will be also sharing a recording of today's webinar later this week for anybody who is unable to join us today, or if you want to watch us again. And programs like today are made possible thanks to all of you who joined us today and support us through your memberships and donations. So please visit our Clothesline hub, which is clothesline.rochester.edu. We have all kinds of great things there. We have an M&T Bank matching challenge throughout the week of Clothesline. We have t-shirts for sale in spirit of our tradition at Clothesline. We have our artists listed out and tons of virtual programs all throughout the week. So be sure to check us out there. We're also still offering our usual $15 off membership throughout the week. It's our best deal of the year for membership and our Clothesline special. So be sure to renew or purchase your membership by visiting our hub. And we'll also have a Visitor's Choice Merit Award that we're giving out to one of our artists at the end of the week. So be sure to cast your vote on our hub. And you can tune in to hear the winner for that award this coming Friday at 4:30 p.m. And when we end our webinar today, your browser should take you to an experience survey. So be sure to fill that out and let us now know how it went for you today. And thank you all for joining us. We'll see you, hopefully some of you tomorrow at our next program. Bye everyone. Thanks Rachel.
Bye.
Thanks Faith.
Thank you.
Bye.